Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Nissan, who for the last 40 years has been proud to call Middle Tennessee home. More information on the work Nissan is doing to support the community is available at nissanusa.com.
I'm Khalil Ekalona, and this is Nashville. Paul Collins is a Nashville-based artist as well as an art professor at Austin Peay State University. You may have seen his work around town. He's created hundreds of colorful signs, wooden cutouts of different animals that all have one thing in common: the word vote painted on them. His work has grown into pieces or installations that seem to ignite joy, curiosity, and far-reaching connections. So let's meet the person and the artist who's known as Paul Collins. Paul, really grateful to have you here with us today. Welcome to This Is Nashville.
Thanks for having me here, Khalil.
Really appreciate it. Okay, you're an artist and an art professor.
Correct. And a dad.
And a dad.
Yep.
A husband, human being,
Yep.
American citizen, all the things. What type of artist are you? What mediums do you like to play with?
Oh, I'm a trained painter. I've been a painter for almost 40 years, but I like to embarrass myself in lots of media. I was doing some ceramics.
Nice.
This summer with my friend Wansu Kim. I've done carving. I like sculptural forms. I like painting freed of the flat surface.
Okay.
Yep.
How did your ceramics experiment turn out?
Well, with some guidance, it went okay. I've been pretty horrible about it in the past, but I was making some slip cast molds, and Wansu, who's a fantastic ceramicist, was showing me how to pour that and create cereal forms. So it was very interesting.
Nice. Tell me this: what do you love about creating art?
Boy, I just really love having new thoughts. I 100% love having new thoughts and making art. Putting my hands in new mediums really slows me down and allows me to digest, and the world around me allows me to process things. So,
what is it like when you get your hands on something? Like when you're working on this ceramics project, a different medium than what you're used to.
Different medium, different fail rate. Ceramics fail at a really high rate. I'm a bull in a china shop in my studio, so I really like to paint. If you make a mistake, you paint over it. Big deal. You can't do that with ceramics. So you got to move much slower, more deliberate. And so it taught me a great deal working with that material. It made me move at a different speed. So that is just really, to my core, really exciting to experience that. It's like going on an amusement park ride in somebody else's body. Anyway, and then it gives me ideas for future applications, strategies to use that material. It initiates a thread of imagination. So,
yeah. So you mentioned failure, a higher failure rate with ceramics.
Oh, yeah, super high fail rate.
With painting.
Yeah.
That relationship with failure. In the terms of working, you have this vision, you attempt to make the vision, but you failed in creating what was originally implanted or imprinted upon your imagination.
Artists and art students and art professors talk about failure all the time because you can become skilled and you can execute with that skill set and you can show people that you're good at something. And this is what a lot of us like to do, but that's not the path to growth. Path to growth is through challenge and through dealing with one's weaknesses, and that's really how you really grow the whole enterprise. And so failure is a necessary part. You have to be able to face that. I'm a painting teacher. I like to tell my students that the last 5% of a painting can take 50% of the time, and that's where you're really defining yourself as an artist because that's where you're actually making choices and you're acting with the risk of blowing it. And that's really where you're going to define yourself. So that's when it becomes real, is when you're really close.
How do you like to go about that? Do you lock yourself away from all stimuli and just work with the vision in your mind, or do you open yourself up to the world and the colors that it offers when you're doing your work?
Oh, I'm a sponge.
Okay.
I'm a sponge. And I won't get ahead, but that the vote signs really have a lot to do about opening up to lots of things I can't control.
Tell me this, what does art give you?
That's a complex question. Like I said, it offers me challenges. I think it's in that sense a good mirror of effort. So I really understand really quickly when I'm faking it. It's a great mirror in that sense. I think for my fellow artists, once you start making art, you can't stop. It's a recipe for unhappiness is to not continue to challenge oneself and keep trying to grow. So, what is, I'm not sure that answers your question.
No, it totally does. It leads to this question. You've never stopped.
Oh, I stopped.
You've stopped.
I remember like a burned, cindery circle 2 years in New York when I was not able to complete a body of work, and I feel shame for it. I feel shame for it because I'm put here to be an artist, and this is what I do with my time. And I think about those times, and that's just when life gets in the way. You have other commitments. I've always been able to nights and weekends do that, but there were a couple of years there where I was just had too much going on, and I couldn't do it, and I remember my big sister, who's always sort of my guardian angel, she pulled me aside. She said, "What are you doing?" And so those were strong words, and I've never let that happen again.
She saw your big sister. I got two big sisters, and they are guardian angels. That's the truth. She saw a difference in you, maybe potentially behaviors, your spirit, just your aura, and said, "Why have you given up this thing that feeds you?"
Yeah, my big sister Katie was a bit witchy, so she could read me very well.
Okay.
So.
Do you have friends, colleagues who stopped?
Yes.
What did it do to them?
Oh, this is what I'm saying. You can't stop because it's I think a source of great unhappiness. A recipe for therapy.
Yeah. I like that. I like the way you put that.
Yeah, no, I went to graduate school with a lot of really talented artists, of which like a tenth of them continue to make work. And I run into them. When I have run into the other 90%, they just feel bad.
Yeah,
it's tough, man. It's a challenge. It's really great. I gotta say, I love Nashville. We have a really supportive community of striving artists, people who are working all the time, and most of us doing it nights and weekends. Because we have day jobs, and so being part of that community of struggle, of effort, is one of the things that really sustains me.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I make music. I have friends who make music, and some people stop for different careers or families. And those of us who I don't do it as nearly as much as I should do, because every time I do it, I feel better. Whatever's getting me down, because I was put here to do that. That's one form of the expressions I was put on the planet to do. So I appreciate you saying that. Thank you for motivating me, and hopefully many other people who are listening. All right, so I want to talk about the Vote Sign Project.
Sure.
You started it in 2020.
Yeah.
What sparked that idea for you?
I had to do something for a couple different reasons. Well, on a personal level, I was freaking out. I was really nervous. The elections have become a time that's really a fraught time for all of us. I am, I guess, as a sponge, doom scrolling the news and not being able to deal with the uncertainty meant I wanted to make work in some way. Let's pair that with like a sense of goal. I was feeling, it's the pandemic. I was feeling incredibly disconnected from my neighbors, my fellow citizens, my friends. Like we're all hiding in our backyards and alleys. Mm-hmm. Another sort of point of context is, I grew up in the tradition of July 4th parades with the dads pushing the lawnmowers and Uncle Sam on stilts. And there was a certain sort of like, it wasn't Mardi Gras, but there was like a sort of a festival, even absurdity to that celebration. I love that. I love pairing that vision of goofy things on floats with like, it's binary, but the Russian troops goose-stepping and pushing out missiles. It's like really different ways to express one's love of one's place.
True.
And I wanted to do something, and I wanted to, help myself in terms of the nervousness, but I also wanted to like inject some, for lack of a better term, positivity, goofiness, and I did want to underline in a really important way. It doesn't matter what choice you make, but let's do our jobs. It's the honor and responsibility to vote. Mm-hmm. Do it. Boy, that sounds like I had a whole plan. It came together as a feeling like I had to do something. Mm-hmm. I really like extended sort of endurance projects. I thought, I can do this. I was going to do something every day for 100 days. So this is like July 26th is the 100th day from the 2020 election. And so the night before, I was like, well, I'm going to paint a sign in the shape of a cardinal and write vote on it. And I'm going to put it out, and I'm going to make it nice enough that somebody doesn't think it's trash and throw it away. I'm going to put it on a sidewalk where anybody can see it. And that's as simple as it started.
And then, so these signs, They're all animal shaped.
They are not experimental. I had a plaster boot that said vote. I had
Nice.
some bird decoys. That's an animal shape, but I have deviated. But for the most part, they're animals.
Why?
Well, Khalil, animals can't vote.
Cats can.
Cats can vote?
I got 3 cats, and they outvote me all the time.
Okay, there you go. It seemed, I don't know. I started with the cardinal because the cardinal's the messenger. And this is the shape of the scraps in my wood pile. My first forms were mostly long, skinny fish and cardinals. And then somebody asked me I want a cat. And then I did not expect to get requests, but I started getting requests through Instagram and stuff. And so that's really where I ended up making a lot more than 100 vote signs, because people would just say, I remember somebody told me to make a sloth. And I was like, are you kidding me? That's like the opposite of what I'm like.
I can see it, though, the slow hand of justice.
So
right?
that's a good one.
Yeah.
Every animal is really fun to paint. They all look like superheroes. They always have look like they got masks. Anyway, a sloth is really fun to paint, as is an armadillo. I just did some raccoons, which I hadn't done a raccoon before, and I was like, wow, raccoons are really fun. A possum is, with all the little babies on the back. A possum is really fun. It's like a bus.
So take me into the studio with you when you are making them. Walk me through the process.
I work in my garage. My primary tool of thinking and figuring out things is a jigsaw. I really love moving a jigsaw, wiggling it around, and finding a shape, seeing a shape come out of a piece of wood. And so I look at a scrap piece of wood, and I'm like, oh, look, that's a classic dog. There's a whale. Things just sort of jump out at me. I cut the shape out. I've got a table saw, so I've chopped a lot of steak wood, and I've got that ready to go. I prime it, and then I prime it lots of different oops colors. Oops paint is what they return to Home Depot when they get home, and they go, ack, that's color's terrible.
Okay.
That's they're usually bright. Then I paint them, and that's continues to be the most laborious part, is thinking about how I want to make them come to life with color, line, texture, pattern. I just love different techniques and stuff. So I've got a big paint sprayer, I got an airbrush, I got a lot of brushes, got my fingers. So it's always like a combination of those things. I like a diversity of touch in how the surface comes together.
You're doing this because you had this mission. You felt you had to do something to inspire people to do our number one civic duty. Do you think artists really have a responsibility for informing people or inspiring people about their civic duties, like voting?
So that question's confusing me. Well, I don't know. I think neighbors have a responsibility to help neighbors, and I think teachers have a responsibility to help their students and to help their colleagues. I don't know about artists being separate. I think I actually worry that artists who feel like that's their mission are going to be really pretentious and sort of preachy. I don't know. I'm uncomfortable with the terms that you put forward. I think of this as a sugar-coated pill, and so I'm putting forward joy first. When somebody asks me what animal, like, can I get a sign? Yes, the signs are free. The signs are free. I'd love to make you a sign. So now I got this connection with a person I don't even know. And I say, you got a spirit animal? Did your child have a favorite animal? They go ask their kids. So now I've this family's on the other side of the keyboard, and they're like brainstorming what they're going to get, what they're going to make. And so that connection I just feel is super special. Mm-hmm. If they get a vote sign and they put it in their front yard and they don't vote, I have got no answer for that whatsoever.
Yeah.
But I don't ask somebody's voting status when I make them a sign. I don't ask them if they're allowed to vote. I'm treasuring that connection. I hope it follows through and makes this other thing, but that's my motivation as I see it.
I hear that. Artists serving the community.
Yeah.
And sharing your work. I get that.
Okay.
I get that. The response to the signs, how has it been?
So, that is really, that's the thing that's like humbling and really exciting. And I will say for both of these projects we're going to be talking today, I'm a teacher. I'm constantly coming up with assignments that I'm going to put in front of my students, and I want them to get their teeth in. and I bomb all the time. It's just like it's mostly me telling them what to do, and that's not what I want them to do more than what I'm telling them because they like the parameters of the dynamic I've presented. And as an artist, every time I make a project, I'm trying to do something that sort of gets legs. And I've been making art for almost 40 years. I bomb all the time. So these two projects are things that just like all of a sudden they just started taking off. So for the vote signs, I made, the first month I made 30 because I made one a day. And then people started asking for them. And so the next month I made 85. And the last month I made like 250. Mm-hmm. So it just, I was doing, and it was a joy to work like at a state of like white heat where I'm doing every single thing I can to keep up with the response I'm getting. That is just a joy. The midterms, I wasn't even planning on doing it, but people were like, hey, it's elections coming up. Can you make me a sign? Well, sure. So I ended up making another 50. This time, like I said, I'm more prepared, but I think it's also, I'm wondering like, did I lose a thread here? Because I started off at such a speed, I was like, you know what? I made 350 last time. I'm going to make 1,000. That is a stupid concept because it's just a number. I'm probably going to hit the exact same number, but now I started by doing 200 in the first month and then 100 in the second month. And this last month, I'm going to make like somewhere between, I don't know, 30 and 100, but I'm going to make them for myself. I want to make like the most exquisite cardinals. I want to make something that really touches your heart, and for myself and for the people who ask me, I want to make So I'm sort of starting fast and slowing down. The response continues to be really strong. I'm making free art. I mean, like this is not a hard thing to sell. Yeah, I could do better with free chicken wings, but I'm delighted to be in the middle of it. I'm delighted, and I've gotten other people involved. So what's really cool is that I've had some artists vote sign painting parties where I've asked some artists to come to my studio and we'll design a sign and I'm going to make a limited production of your sign. So Katherine Ceicys is a really fantastic painter. Becca Kohler is unbelievable ceramicist. Eliana Gordon, she just graduated from USN, really talented young artist, asked to come over. I was like, make a sign and I'll make a short edition of them. Marlo Sivan is another one. I've given away at my community giveaways. Mm-hmm. So the other people are making them. And I've heard from people, Roger Mono, the really fantastic music producer. It's like, Roger, you want a sign? He's like, I saw your sign. I thought it was cool. I made my own, man. Nice. It's like, that's the goal. Yeah. So I continue to get a good response for giving away free art.
That's awesome.
Free art that I care about.
That's right. All right, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Nashville artist Paul Collins. We're going to hear more about his personal journey as an artist. Stay with us. This is Nashville.
Funding for This is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil Lekolona, and this is Nashville. Welcome back to the show. Today we are talking with local artist Paul Collins. You may have seen his colorful and playful animal signs around the town with the word vote on them. Paul is also a professor at Austin Peay State University in Clarksville. Again, Paul, we're grateful to have you here. Thanks.
Thanks for having me here.
All right. So when did you first discover that you liked art, that art gave something to you?
I've always been making art since I was a wee lad. I've always drawn. I was sort of famous in my grammar school for being able to draw all the members of KISS and used to trade those for candy, that sort of thing. I always did it. I didn't think it was particularly serious, and I was told it was not a serious endeavor. So I went to college to do something else, and there's just no shaking it,
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's been with you. From the beginning.
From the beginning.
I understand you had a significant moment of your life when you were a student studying in Spain.
This is true.
Tell me what happened.
Well, I went to college, Khalil, to do something serious. I went to be an international lawyer. And I didn't know what that was, but my dad was a lawyer, and I wanted to travel. So I thought that's something that somebody can do. And when I was in college, I did a study abroad program. Went to Spain for a couple months to study Spanish. And I went over a couple weeks early and traveled by myself. And I was in a youth hostel in Extremadura, which is a really dry section in the eastern part of Spain. Not a lot of tourists, a lot of great Roman ruins, which is what I thought would be cool to see. And I was in this hostel room, and they had a really old school black Bakelite phone, beautiful big chunky handles, curly Q wire going to the wall. It was a big hefty thing, and I just started drawing it and just scribbling it in my journal, and I just drew it for hours trying to get it right. And it was long enough that I lost time, which is a good sign when you're doing something, but also as I was, becoming aware of what's happening, I said, what are you doing? Like, this is all you care about. And it was crystal clear. So from that point on, I didn't doubt it.
At that moment of clarity.
In that moment of clarity, I came back, became an art major, and that was that.
How have you really been able to stay dedicated to the part of yourself that is meant to create? You're going through life. As you mentioned, life happened. You took 2 years off. You had this understanding.
I got run over for 2 years. I did not take 2 years off. But anyway,
Okay.
I was not able to practice my craft. Let's see. Well, I'm married to a painter, to an artist, and that's, again, towards that helps build my net of support. Married to the really fantastic artist, Alex Blau. And knowing other people who, when we were just talking about a community of struggle, knowing other people who are trying as well, that's a big thing. The 15 years between graduating from graduate school and getting my first teaching job, I worked in cubicles in New York doing new media stuff. They don't care about art. They don't care about art at all. But then you find somebody at the, there used to be a water cooler, and you find out that they're, interested in sewing, or they're interested in art, or they're interested in graphic design. It's like, oh my God, like you see somebody who's got a shared sense of priorities. It's really important. It helps that community. Fast forward, teaching is an unbelievable way to be inspired and humbled on a regular basis.
True.
So now I got that going for me. And I think also just Nashville. Nashville, we have got a great art scene here. And by great, what I mean is in a lot of ways, commercially, it's underdeveloped. I showed Red Arrow Gallery. It's a great gallery, great community of artists. But there's not a lot of galleries here, like for a city our size. There's not a lot of people making their living off of selling work. And so that lack of structure means that there is no reason why I can't collaborate with a 20-year-old or 60-year-old. And so that sort of give and take, and I've seen that since I got here 13 years ago, people are just open for stuff. I remember seeing somebody who mounted a show in the back of a U-Haul van, and they just backed it up next to the galleries at the packing plant, and they had lights on the inside, and it was like, well, these guys are having a show and you're having a show. There's no hierarchy, major hierarchical differences between them. And I think that's super healthy, and it's certainly really fun as a making artist here in Nashville.
Come one, come all.
Come all.
Artists and art lovers alike.
Yep.
All right. Now, you said that when you were young, you had a desire to do it, but you were told it wasn't serious. You were advised to do something else. Who told you? Who told you to take a different path?
We throwing my dad under the bus here?
I guess you just did.
Yeah.
So it was your parents.
It was my Well, to a certain degree, I'd say here's a contradiction in terms. Is my mom, we did not have great art programs in my town, and my mom paid for me to go and take art lessons from a local artist. So I felt supportive of my family. And when I was in high school, we didn't have art classes. I was allowed to, even encouraged to create my own. So that's really awesome. It's just when we were talking about college and moving forward, this is not serious. This is not serious. This is not a way to support a family or to, and so my dad and I had something called The Talk, and we had it every year from 19 to 40, age 40, every year. And it was like a joke. We were like, I'd get a nice dinner out of it. He'd take me out for dinner.
21 years.
21 years, and every time it was like, that's not really going to, art is not going to challenge you to use all of your skills and all of your abilities. And I think you should think more broadly about a different job or a different career path.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, my dad has the best intentions for me.
Yeah.
But there is often, not uniformly, but there is often that pressure from, I know from my students, from parents towards their kids about like, how are you going to do this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Look, when I told my folks, hey, I don't want to go to law school to become a politician. I want to move to L.A. and make hip-hop music, they would pull their hair out. But there's also the people encouraging myself and my siblings to be creative and express ourselves creatively.
Yeah.
Okay, so your dad did this until you were 40. What made him stop? And before you answer that...
I got a job.
You got a job.
I got a job teaching. And so I was like, oh, there we go.
Okay, it's turned into something.
Yes.
But what were the last couple of years, what were those dinners like? I'm sure they had to be kind of fun when you're like, okay, here it comes.
Oh, yeah, last couple. No, this is like throughout my 20s. I mean, they were fun. And sometimes I'd say his lines for him, yeah. And I would talk. I mean, it always challenged me to make an argument, to discuss how I was going to take my talents or my interest in this area and develop it. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think it was an annealing process, a forging process.
Yes.
And I'm thankful for that. So.
All right. If you're just tuning in, this is Nashville, and I'm your host, Khalil A. Colonna. We're talking this hour with Nashville-based artist and art professor Paul Collins. Okay, you talked a little bit about teaching at Austin Peay State University. It's in Clarksville, everyone, if you don't know. Yep. But now you do. You said it's invigorating, it's inspiring, it's also humbling.
Yeah.
Kind of all at once. What do you love about that job as a professor?
Well, let's see. I cannot separate the job from the place, and I have worked at a number of different art institutions, and oftentimes behind the scenes there can be politics or personal issues between people. There's a difference in priorities that can play out in terms of how people treat each other. That's never made sense to me because being an art teacher is like the greatest gig ever. It is the place where the values of that job align most closely to my personal values in terms of the proposing and challenging oneself to be creative. I will say at Austin Peay, I've never experienced any of that politics. It's a really mission-focused place. Majority of our students come from within a half an hour radius of our school. A lot of our students do not have art classes before coming to Austin Peay. We are the most accessible and least expensive institution in the state of Tennessee. We have a lot of military students. It's a really interesting, diverse student body. You never know who you're talking to. Mm-hmm. You just never know who you're talking to. And so my job as a teacher is to provide a modest amount of technical instruction and then to try to sort of coach them towards courage to believe in their own stories and to believe that what their life experiences add up in terms of what they're going to bring to the project is like all they need. That's like an ideal state. And I've never been in a place that's been that focused, honestly. Mm-hmm. And so the challenge to myself as a teacher to stay responsive to the person I'm dealing with, slow down and see where they're at, see how they can move forward, is it is humbling. It is humbling some of the challenges my students face. I have a lot of students who work 2 jobs and they go to my class and they're raising a family.
Wow.
Yeah. Coffee St. McCoy, I'm calling you out on air. Coffee St. McCoy has 7 kids. She's a Navy vet. She was in my Painting 1 class, and she's in class, and I tell everybody, it's a structured class. I know what I'm doing. It starts off really structured, then it opens up. Mm-hmm. And in the structured part, I'm telling him to do some sort of laborious technical work. And she's giving me, I say, okay, so Coffee, where's your painting? She shows me 2 paintings. So, oh, you're doing 2. Well, then you should do 3. And I tell her to do this, and she does it. She probably did 30 paintings in a 15-week class. Towards the end, I was like, Coffee, you're really finding yourself. And she was doing more and more portraits of her family. I said, Coffee, you should have a solo exhibition. This is a Painting 1 class. And she said, okay. And she put on a great show. She then took one of the best paintings of that, and she applied for a show at the Frist, and she was at a show at the Frist Museum. So you never know. You can't assume that Coffee St. McCoy is overworked or overburdened. Some people paint fast, some people paint slow. I just have to be responsive to figure out who's who and just find a way to coax them forward,
And so you mentioned that these are some of the first time some of your students have had any type of formal art instruction.
Yep.
Was coffee one of those?
Well, Coffee came to my painting class after taking our foundations program. So when you go to Austin Peay in your freshman and sophomore year, you take a series of design classes and 2D design, 3D design, and then digital.
Okay.
And so it's often in those classes that some students don't know how to use a ruler, and that sounds ridiculous, but it's just like you haven't used a ruler before.
Mm-hmm.
There's some basic tool instruction. And then there's in terms of design, like it's easy to see a picture and see, hey, I like that. But breaking that apart in terms of analysis of what are the functioning design elements and why you like that, you got to take on a lot of vocabulary. You got to do a lot of experimentation yourself. So we take anybody who's got an interest, and we have programs in graphic design, animation, art history, art education, and studio, which is where I teach. I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody. I'm going to get in trouble, but. We have really great foundational instructions, and then they release them to the different studios.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to ask you this, and then we're going to go to break.
Okay.
A lot of your students, you were talking about encouraging them to tell their stories.
Yes.
The younger students are very used to telling their stories on social media through content and things of that nature. Do you find they have trouble from moving from a digital platform to creating a piece of art, or does that come easy to them, your younger students?
I work hard to incorporate digital ideation throughout. I teach analog in upper level studio classes, in my classes, painting classes and drawing classes. They can make digital work, but for the painting one, the initial boot camp thing, it's analog. But if there are natural, because I say, who's got a sketchbook? Nobody's got a sketchbook. Everybody's using Procreate on their device. Mm-hmm. So I said, that's your sketchbook. You still have to do, So I am mindful to, and I swear to God, the pandemic taught us all to be better educators, because there's so many ways that we can put ourselves where the students are and not ask them to take on a different experience.
Yeah.
But you say they're being truthful, or you say they're sharing.
Yeah, I mean, they're sharing stuff.
They're sharing.
They're sharing. It's called content creation. But sometimes if you're going to sit down to do a painting, a piece of art, that's a little bit more personal than what people are used to sharing online. It is. So there's a lot of you can participate in a style online. I'm not going to say copying, but you can see stylistically what the recipe is, and you can repurpose that. Mm-hmm. It's really different from doing a personal audit about who are you, where you come from, and how you're going to use that unique set of experiences that you have to make a work that nobody else can make. Mm. That takes a lot of work. That takes a lot of trust in oneself. I'm jumping ahead, but that really has to do with the banned book project. You got to be able to trust yourself to make art, and that is not a fun process. Mm. That is a process of vulnerability to do something that honestly talks about what you are, that's different from all the other messages that you're going to see on social media, and then put that in front of a room full of your peers and have them judge it. That puts you in a really vulnerable state. So I applaud my students for going through exactly that process. I want to talk about the Banned Booked project right after this break. When we come back, we're going to hear about Paul's latest large-scale public installations, the Unbannable Library. Stay with us. This is Nashville. I'm Khalil Ekalona, and this is Nashville. Today we're speaking with local artist and Austin Peay State University professor Paul Collins. We're talking about his work. He's the creator and facilitator behind the Unbannable Library, which features massive books, some 3 feet by 5 feet, displayed in over 11 venues around town. 80 writers, poets, artists, and students have contributed to this project, which is a response to recent efforts in legislation here in Tennessee that resulted in censorship and banning texts from schools and public libraries. Paul, thank you again for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Talking with you. All right, this project has been in the works for a few years. I understand it was about 7 years ago that the ball got rolling.
Oh, sorry, that's a misstatement. Project's been happening for a year. I've been making big books for about 7 years.
So you've been making big books for 7 years.
Yeah, I love making paintings. I'm always trying to figure out a way to make more paintings. So the idea of sewing all these paintings into a book was a sneaky way to get like 12 paintings into one, rectangular form.
Okay.
So you can just, anyway, I don't know why there's not more big books in the world. I really love painting a book as big as me. So,
what's the spine? How do you attach it? Like make the spine for the book.
I make all the books out of stuff you can buy at a hardware store. The ingredients are privacy reed woven privacy fencing, like you put on a balcony.
Okay. Yeah.
Chicken wire, Tyvek, which is a house wrap, muslin, which is a lightweight canvas, styrofoam, and the front and back are. Anyway, those things are sewn together in different layers to make a page. The styrofoam's on the front and the back. The reed fencing is the pages in between. The Tyvek makes a crinkle like a piece of paper. Mm-hmm. And I sew these suckers together on a really big industrial sewing machine called a fabricator that sounds like it's powered by a steam engine. It goes boom, 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 boom.
Wow.
Anyway, so the spines get sewn together.
Thank you for giving me details about how this is made. But, I mean, tell me, how did the idea to make the Unbannable Library come out of it?
Okay, so that's different. So I make big books. I make my paintings, like a painted book, like a graphic novel version of a painting. Mm-hmm. It's extended, multi-image meditation on a certain subject. I got to show those books at the Southern Festival of Books last fall. And I was just, it's like my ideal community. I'm a book nerd. These are my book nerd. People are like, oh my gosh, this book is really big. While I was there, I met the librarian for the Peabody Library, Vanderbilt Peabody Library, Tiffany Fontenot. And she was volunteering. I was presenting. We were both sort of trapped there. And we kept running into each other. And Tiffany said, Paul, I'd love to have a show of your books at the Peabody. And I said, well, that would be cool. It would be really cool to have a show. And then we were talking about banned books because one of my books deals with my personal library, which I guess incidentally has a bunch of banned books in it. And I said, well, when's Banned Books Week? And so she said, it's in September. I said, so let's do a show that corresponds with Banned Books Week, and let's get local artists to make work about this. So we were just going back and forth over 2 days. I just had a great time brainstorming with Tiffany. And when that event ended in the end of October, in November, we started writing what would be an overview of this effort. Why do we want to put an art in library show around banned books? Why we want to do it here in Tennessee? Got the idea that we wanted to. I got the idea to have it in a variety, like as many libraries. Like how many people are affected by book bans? Who are they? They're librarians, they're teachers, they're students, they're artists, they're writers. We want to have the voices represented through the works. I was thinking at the time that they would be like you'd make a print or a drawing or something. So I was thinking it was framed works. And we approached a lot of libraries. Tiffany helped me convene a Zoom call of all these different libraries. And people were like, what is this going to look like? It wasn't really getting much traction. In visiting the different venues, everybody said, well, I want one of your big books. And then we'll figure out where we'll put the 2D art. And the artists every artist I talked to said, yeah, I'm in. I want to do it. What do I make it about? Like, what book do I use? I was like, well, I'm not an expert in banned texts. So there was it was just going really slow through the winter and the spring. I reached out to somebody I follow on Instagram, Christine Hall, who's a really fantastic poet. And actually, I late night Instagram, can't sleep. I see a text by somebody I follow, and I just wrote a note, said, wow, this is what a gift. Thank you so much. It really made my day. And then a week later, the same post from Zena Raquel, the poem lists Starland, which is a store near my house. And I was like, oh my God, this person is my neighbor. And so I looked, I squinted at her little little icon. And sure enough, like a week and a half later, I see her at an opening, a fundraiser for Coop Gallery, and I went and introduced myself, and I said, her name in the world is Christine Hall. I said, we should work on a big book. So that was the first like artist-writer working together on a big book.
Okay.
I then told a friend that I was like doing this, and they said, well, I want to paint one of your big books. And so I said, well, I'll make you a big book. So this caught on
pretty quickly.
I'm a pretty chatty guy, Khalil. So, I mean, I invited the guy from Home Depot, the checkout cashier at Home Depot. I invited, any time I talk to an artist, they show some interest. I'm like, you should make a big book. It went from like one book right before Memorial Day to about 20 books by the middle of July. So I knew my summer was going to be making big blank books. I made about 20 big blank books between 2 by 3 feet to 4 by 6.5 feet. And it grew really fast. And in each case, in almost all cases, we have a writer, mostly a poet, and an artist. And the writer's job is like spirit guide. They either identify banned or restricted texts, contested texts, or they write their original poem based on banned or contested text, or it's just their original voice, their original work. And then the artist responds visually. That's sort of the blueprint, but in a lot of cases, like my own working with Christine, we both did. I mean, I did not write. She allowed me to pick the poem, but she painted, and a lot of people acted sort of out of scope to make things happen. So there's 25 of these projects in 12 different venues around Middle Tennessee. 5 Nashville public libraries, the Vanderbilt Central Library, the Peabody Library with Tiffany, TSU's Brown Daniel Library, and Austin Peay State University. It was at Artville, and I think Begonia Labs is going to host one. And then the Southern Festival of Books again is going to be the first time that they're all together.
What did it feel like being a part of the coordinating for this? Because in this case, like the project has grown beyond the artist. My
mouth is open and my tongue sticking out. It stretched my capabilities. It has stretched my capabilities in terms of communication. But who else is going to do it? So I think I mentioned with the vote signs, I feel really lucky when an idea starts to get legs, and I could see in that arc of June when people were just saying yes, 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 that this thing is got some legs, and I'm just like I'm a book nerd, and I'm excited about this form. So the idea of all these different responses to the form, I was just anyway, it really buoyed me. This is a big project. There's 80 participants. We've got 65 collaborating parties. That includes two classes, a class in art and social practice with Mike Mitchell at TSU, a class of art students at MLK High School with Stephen Graham, and 15 librarians, 5 sort of sponsoring, supporting institutions. It's a lot of emails.
That's why
I haven't met everybody yet. So we really need to have if you guys hear this, we really need to have a party and get together. But at the latest, that'll be at the Southern Festival of Books.
Okay. Now this huge public project that you're embarking on, and it's interesting because as an artist, you've done projects before. You really don't know what people are going to walk away with when they see your work. You have an understanding of the intention that you'd like them to walk away with, but everyone's different. What type of feedback have you been getting from viewers? Like people who understand these big books, the ones that have been done that they've seen so far.
The feedback has been fantastic. People are really, it's like a vehicle that taps a very childlike response to the love of the book form. Book is the least controllable conveyant of knowledge. It is lo-fi. You cannot control the book.
Yeah.
And so these big, and they're colorful. A lot of them have applique and collage, and they are big, goofy, really rich texturally books that are illuminating beautifully written texts. Like I said, sometimes original poems. My book with Christine is all based upon a poem that she wrote, and that's like the centerpiece of the book. We've got a really great local writer and advocate, Siona Rouse, has done a magnificent poem based upon sort of a fictional. It marries the Toni Morrison's Sula with the Emancipation Proclamation, and that has been illustrated by with original paintings and lettering by Katherine Ceicys, who I mentioned earlier, really great painter. That's at Peabody. People see these and they're it's a little bit of giggle, and it's a little bit of awe because the scale is really big and the visuals are really, really powerful. Visuals and the words.
What about somebody who supports these book bans or they're advocating for book censorship? What do you hope they walk away with, should they see one?
I have not reached out to a lot of people who are supporting book bans in this project. I mentioned earlier, trying to artfully answer your question. I guess if somebody who really supports book bans saw the Unbannable Library, I hope they would see that this is the response of people who aren't afraid of this. I think this tactic is a heavy-handed tactic, is a heavy-handed tactic towards a soft target. And I think the goal of this, if you look at people who I've even rhetorically might be pro book ban, they say we should ban. You have to have book bans to ban books about explosive, how to make a homemade explosive. Those books are not on the list of books that were banned last week in Rutherford County.
Yeah.
The books that are overwhelmingly being banned are books that reflect the life experiences of people, LGBTQIA, and people of color, overwhelmingly. And the mechanisms that they're devising, there are some. We don't even have to go into all the proposed legislation because some of it is. I mean, I'm glad it didn't pass, but I wonder whether the goal was even to pass it or whether the goal was to chill discourse around the subject in our public institutions. And so in developing this project, I've already seen censorship is not just we're selected this book and this book is no longer in circulation. Censorship is when I have an institution back out because they're worried about, they don't even want to have a divisive topic and jeopardize their funding from the state.
Yeah. That's
censorship. When we're pre-censoring, that is the big problem. And so I would hope somebody would say, these books, how can they put so much joy in this space when it's supposed to be a fraught, scared space?
Okay, so final question for you. These final reflections, only have a couple minutes left.
Sure.
So in this fraught, scared space, these very, very serious issues about what we understand of other people and their lives, their reflections that are in these books, you are tackling it with giant, massive books that are energetic, fun, whimsical, even. In the idea of them, the texts may be very heavy and serious, but the idea of these really giant books seems to me something fun. What is it like? I mean, you're taking on these serious issues, but you're coming with the opposite energy of joy rather than doom.
Well, I do want to clarify something because one of I think the strongest books is based on a poem written by Ali El-Shir and illustrated. The art is and the book is designed by Austin P., my colleague, Patrick Vincent. And the book is about, it's called Banned Books. It's not specific in any of the text, but I read it strongly about the experience, the Palestinian experience currently. And this book is not a funny book. This book will make the hairs go up on your neck. And you know what? I had my first, because I think the future of this thing is a lending library, honestly.
Okay.
So I got a library reached out and they say, we know this work. We saw it at Artville. We really want to have this in our library for a while. Amen. This is great. I said, can you? Anyway, I think that is what I hope to be the future of this endeavor. I want to grow the library, and I would love to make it available to other libraries that want to be able to show this fearlessness.
Would I need a giant library card?
Yeah, yes, you do, and a big stamp. Oh man, you don't spoil it.
The giant Dewey Decimal System. Okay, we're gonna go there. I really had fun. Thank you for talking with us. Paul Collins is a Nashville-based artist and professor at Austin Peay State University. We'll have the links to his work on today's web post. You can also check out paulpaul.com. That's PAUL.com to see online galleries of his works on his website. Paul, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Great talking to you, Khalil. Thank you so much for having me in.
And thanks to you for tuning in this hour. This is Nashville is a production of Nashville Public Radio. Today's episode was produced and directed by Katherine Ceicys. Our technical director and board operator is Liv Lombardi. The masterminds behind our theme music are Larange and Namir Blade. You can listen back at thisisnashville.org or wherever you get good podcasts. And the conversation doesn't end here. Tweet us at This Is Nashville. Hit us up for our online survey to let us know what you're thinking about. And also call us to leave us a message, 615-751-2500. This is Nashville. I'm Khalil Ekalona. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody, and be good to each other.